Hey guys, today we are diving into something that sounds simple on the surface, but changes everything the moment you decide to live it. Imagine you're standing in front of a mirror right now, staring at your own reflection. You can see the lines of your past written across your face, the mistakes you've made, the people who hurt you, the situations you never asked for. But look closer. There's also possibility staring back at you, and the possibility is louder than your excuses if you're brave enough to listen. The truth is, your life will never move forward until you accept this. Responsibility starts now, not later. Not when the conditions improve, not when people finally treat you right. Right now. You can keep waiting for some outside force to rescue you, but the only one who can flip the script is the person in that mirror. The moment you accept responsibility, the atmosphere shifts. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly you see that you're not powerless. You're not doomed to repeat the same patterns unless you keep handing over the pen that writes your story. Responsibility isn't about fault. It's about response. Things have happened to you. Yes. Some of them weren't fair. Some of them cut deep. Some of them left scars that may never fully fade. But standing still in blame does not heal. Pointing fingers doesn't build bridges. Waiting for apologies doesn't create progress. What creates progress is the decision to own your response. That decision flips you from being an observer of your life into the active builder of it. Think about it. Every excuse you've ever told yourself has stolen time. I can't because my parents didn't teach me. I can't because my boss doesn't see my worth. I can't because the world is stacked against me. Every single I can't because becomes a chain that locks you to the ground, and the heavier the chain, the harder it feels to move. But the key has always been in your pocket. You just haven't used it. That key is responsibility. The second you use it, you cut through the excuses. You free your energy to ask a better question. Not, why me? But what now? Let's make it real. Imagine two people who go through the same setback. Say, they both lose their jobs. One spends the next 6 months telling the story of betrayal, rehearsing every detail of how unfair it was, letting the bitterness become their identity. The other wakes up devastated too, but after a week says, "This is my life, and I need to decide what happens next." They start researching, calling, applying, learning new skills. A year later, one is still replaying the pain, while the other is building a fresh chapter. The difference isn't luck. It isn't background. It isn't who had better friends. It's responsibility. One chose to give power away. The other chose to take it back. Responsibility doesn't mean you deny reality. It means you stop being ruled by it. You stop using it as a justification for staying stuck. Look, there will always be people who wronged you. There will always be events you wish had never happened. But those things are already written in the past. Responsibility is the pen that writes the next line. And here's the secret. The moment you hold that pen with confidence, your energy changes. You walk into a room differently. You speak differently. You stop begging life to be easier, and you start becoming stronger. And people notice. Opportunities notice. Even your own mind notices, because you start respecting yourself again. Now let's be clear. Responsibility is not comfortable. It will ask you questions you've been avoiding. What habits have you ignored? What patterns do you keep repeating? What truths have you buried under the excuse of being too busy or too tired? Taking responsibility means you stop pretending you don't know the answer. You do know, You've always known. And it's scary, because once you admit it, you can't hide anymore. But here's the twist. The thing you fear, owning your choices, is the exact thing that frees you. It's like finally cleaning a messy room. At first, it feels overwhelming to face the chaos. But the moment you start, step by step, you create space to breathe again. Responsibility clears that space in your life. Picture this. Every morning, life gives you a set of doors. Some doors are painted with complaints, some with distractions, some with avoidance. But one door is painted with bold letters that say, "Own it." That's the door that leads to change. Every day you choose, sometimes without realizing, you pick the door of blame, and you walk through it and end up in the same hallway you've been stuck in for years. But the day you choose the own it door, even if you're terrified, even if you feel unready, you find a hallway you've never seen before. That hallway leads to growth. That hallway leads to a future you build brick by brick instead of waiting for someone to hand to you. Let's go deeper. Responsibility changes not only how you act, but how you think. When you live without responsibility, you're constantly scanning for who to blame. Your energy is outward, scattered, defensive. But when you step into responsibility, you flip that lens inward. You ask questions that sharpen you. What am I doing that keeps me here? What can I do differently today to move forward? What small decision will make tomorrow just 1% better? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are the engine of growth. And the more you practice them, the more natural they become. Think about the times you've felt proud of yourself. Maybe it was finishing a project you thought you couldn't handle. Maybe it was keeping a promise to yourself to wake up early or to stick to a commitment. That pride didn't come from luck. It came from responsibility. You made a choice. You followed through. And you built trust with yourself. That's the foundation of confidence. Not the fake confidence that comes from pretending you've got it all figured out, but the real confidence that comes from knowing you show up for yourself, even when it's hard. Here's the catch, though. Responsibility is tested the most when things aren't your fault. It's easy to own your decisions when everything is smooth. But what about when someone lies about you? What about when life hits you with illness, loss, or betrayal? In those moments, responsibility feels unfair, and you might think, why should I have to deal with this when I didn't cause it? The answer is, because this is your life. Nobody else is going to live it for you. Nobody else can carry the weight of your next step. Responsibility doesn't mean you created the problem. It means you are strong enough to face it and choose your response. That's what makes you powerful. That's what separates people who grow from people who collapse. I want you to imagine standing at a crossroads. To your left is the road of blame. It's crowded. People there are talking loudly, swapping stories about how life is unfair, pointing fingers, nodding in agreement, staying exactly where they are. To your right is the road of responsibility. It's quieter. Fewer people walk there. The ground looks rougher, but every person on that road is moving forward. Their eyes are clearer. Their steps are heavier with purpose. That's the road you need to choose, even when it looks harder, because it's the only one that leads to the future you crave. Responsibility also shifts your relationship with time. When you avoid responsibility, time slips through your fingers. Days turn into months, months into years, and nothing changes because you keep telling yourself the same story. But when you take responsibility, time sharpens. You see each day as a chance to make progress, no matter how small. you realize that the compound effect of daily ownership is unstoppable. A single workout might not transform your health, but responsibility says, do it anyway. A single conversation might not heal your relationship, but responsibility says, start talking. A single act of discipline might not change your life overnight, but responsibility says, stack it, repeat it, let it build. And when you live that way, you stop fearing the slow pace of progress because you know you're moving. You know you're not wasting time anymore. Let's not sugarcoat this. Responsibility will sometimes feel heavy. It will demand that you stop complaining about things you secretly enjoy complaining about. It will challenge the identity you've built around your struggles. It will strip away the comfort of being a victim. And yes, that's uncomfortable. But comfort has never built greatness. Comfort has never created growth. If you want to rise, you have to trade comfort for responsibility. And once you do, the weight doesn't feel like a burden. It feels like strength training. Every time you lift it, you get stronger. Every time you face it, you discover you can carry more than you thought. So here's the question you need to carry forward. What part of your life are you still refusing to own? Maybe it's your health, your work ethic, your relationships, your finances, your self-discipline. Wherever you're pointing a finger, stop and turn it back to yourself. That's where your next step begins. Responsibility is not a one-time event. It's a daily decision. It's the voice you choose to listen to each morning. The voice that says, yes, it's on me. Yes, it's my life. Yes, I will do something about it. That voice is waiting, and the longer you ignore it, the longer you stay stuck. But the moment you honor it, the moment you say yes, everything shifts. Your life starts moving, not because the world suddenly got easier, but because you finally took the wheel. Your attention is your most valuable currency. Wherever it goes, your future follows. If your focus is scattered, so is your progress. If your focus is sharp, everything around you begins to align. Yet most people don't realize that they've been handing their attention away as if it were cheap, when in reality, it's the most expensive thing they own. Every notification you check the second it pings, every hour you scroll without direction, every worry you replay in your mind is a withdrawal from your future. And if you're not careful, the account runs dry before you've built anything meaningful. Training your attention isn't about becoming some robot who never gets distracted. It's about building the awareness and the discipline to guide your focus back to what matters. Because focus, just like strength, is a muscle. It grows stronger with repetition, and the more you practice directing it, the less power distractions hold over you. Think of your focus like a flashlight. Shine it on the weeds, and that's all you'll see. Shine it on the path forward, and suddenly, your next step is clear. Let me ask you something. When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing your attention lands on? For many, it's the phone, notifications, news, messages. All of it immediately sets the tone for your mind. Before you've even stood up, your attention has been hijacked by other people's agendas, and you wonder why you feel drained before the day begins. But imagine if your first focus wasn't noise, but clarity. Imagine if you asked yourself, what do I want this day to move toward? That single question changes everything. It doesn't mean the day will be perfect, but it means your attention starts where growth can happen, not where chaos thrives. Think about athletes. Before a big game, they don't wander aimlessly, waiting to feel focused. They train their mind to narrow in. They rehearse. They visualize. They center themselves because they know their performance depends on what their mind does before their body moves. Your life is no different. The way you train your attention before the challenges arrive decides whether you fall into old patterns or rise with new strength. Here's the trap. Your brain loves novelty. It loves quick hits of stimulation. That's why distractions are so seductive. It's not that you're weak. It's that your brain is wired to seek what's easy. But growth is rarely found in ease. Growth requires depth, and depth requires sustained attention. You can dabble in 1,000 things and feel busy, or you can lock in on a handful of things that matter and feel progress. The difference is not in talent. It's in trained attention. Picture a magnifying glass in the sun. Hold it loosely, let it drift, and nothing happens. But hold it steady, and the heat grows so strong it can ignite fire. Your attention works the same way. When you scatter it across every frustration, every distraction, every meaningless task, it warms nothing. But when you hold it steady on a goal, a skill, a vision, it ignites. That fire is what carries you forward. Let's make this practical. Training your attention begins with noticing where it leaks. What's stealing your focus without giving anything back? Maybe it's the endless cycle of comparing yourself to others. Maybe it's replaying mistakes from years ago. Maybe it's overthinking every possible outcome before you even take the first step. These leaks drain your energy and cloud your direction, and you don't stop them by shaming yourself. You stop them by catching them. The moment you notice, wait, my focus is drifting into negativity again. You create a chance to redirect. That split second of awareness is powerful. It's the hinge that swings your day in a new direction. Try this. Throughout your day, pause and ask, where is my attention right now? Is it serving my growth, or is it feeding distraction? If the answer doesn't serve you, shift. Stand up. Change your environment. Take a breath. Write a note. Call yourself back to the task that matters. That act of redirection is like a rep in the gym. Every rep strengthens the muscle. Over time, what once felt impossible becomes natural. Now, don't confuse focus with toxic positivity. Training your attention doesn't mean ignoring problems. It means refusing to give them more energy than they deserve. Problems are real. They need attention, but only enough to solve, not enough to dominate your entire mind. Too many people live inside their problems instead of working through them. They rehearse stress like it's a script they're trying to memorize. That's not problem solving. That's problem feeding. Your job is to give your problems the attention required to act, and then to move on. To shift your focus back to building, creating, growing. There's a quiet kind of power that comes with focus. You've felt it before. Those moments when time seemed to disappear because you were so locked in on what mattered. Maybe you were studying, writing, creating, or even having a conversation that lit you up. Hours slipped by, and when you came back to awareness, you realized you had actually made progress. That's flow. And flow only comes when your attention is trained to stay in the moment, instead of darting around like a restless bird. Consider how much of your life could change if you built more of those moments. Projects that always feel half-finished would move forward. Skills you've been meaning to learn would finally stick. Relationships would deepen because you'd actually be present. Confidence would grow because you'd prove to yourself that you can hold steady. This isn't magic, it's practice. It's choosing again and again to train your focus. not to let it be pulled like a puppet by everything loud and urgent. Here's a practical drill. Give yourself 5 minutes of deep, undistracted focus on one thing every day. That's it. 5 minutes. No phone, no multitasking, no noise, just you and the task. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. Your mind will itch to wander, but keep holding. Day after day, that 5 minutes will stretch. Soon it's 10, then 20, then an hour. You're building stamina, and just like physical training, the more you do it, the stronger you become. The world will not make this easy. Distractions are everywhere, engineered to capture your attention. But your job is to reclaim ownership. Ask yourself, is what I'm focusing on right now building the life I want, or is it just filling space? That one question is like a compass. It doesn't erase temptation, but it points you back to true north. Don't underestimate how much even a small shift in focus can change you. 5 minutes of stillness in the morning might save you 5 hours of scattered anxiety later. Choosing to give your attention to gratitude instead of resentment might transform the way you walk into work. Redirecting your focus from everything's wrong to what's one thing I can do right now might unlock momentum that's been hiding under your nose. The smallest redirect can have the biggest ripple. And here's the deeper truth. You are always training your focus, whether you mean to or not. Every time you indulge a distraction, you reinforce the habit of scattered attention. Every time you dwell on what's broken, you strengthen the muscle of negativity. But every time you catch yourself and shift back to growth, you're rewiring your brain. You're teaching yourself that attention is not something you lose, it's something you choose. So, as you move through your day, remember this: scattered focus equals scattered results. Trained focus equals progress. You don't need perfect focus to build a meaningful life. You just need better focus than yesterday. And when you stack those better days, you build a future where clarity leads the way and distractions lose their grip. Fear has a way of multiplying when you give it room to breathe. A challenge shows up in front of you. Maybe it's small. Maybe it's just an email you've been avoiding, a call you don't want to make, or a decision you've been putting off. At first, it looks manageable, but then you hesitate. You tell yourself you'll deal with it tomorrow. You let your imagination wander. And suddenly, that small step turns into a mountain. What was once a task is now a giant shadow in your mind. That's the trap of hesitation. The longer you wait, the bigger it grows. The most powerful way to dismantle fear is to move before it gets the chance to stretch. Not recklessly, not thoughtlessly, but intentionally and early. Because courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to act while fear is still whispering in your ear. Every time you move in the presence of fear, you send a message to your brain: I am not controlled by this. And the more you repeat that message, the quieter fear becomes. Picture this. You're standing at the edge of a cold pool. You dip a toe in, and it feels freezing. You step back. You start thinking about how uncomfortable it will be, how shocking the water will feel, how maybe you're not ready. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to jump in. But the moment you leap, within seconds your body adjusts, and the thing you feared becomes bearable. Life is full of cold pools, and if you don't train yourself to jump in early, you'll spend your days shivering on the sidelines, building monsters out of moments that could have strengthened you. Hesitation doesn't just stall you, it rewires you. Every time you let fear decide, you teach your mind a pattern. When things feel uncomfortable, we wait. That pattern solidifies until waiting becomes automatic. And before long, you look back and realize months, even years, have passed with you standing still. Not because you were incapable, but because fear convinced you to pause instead of push. You've seen this in your own life. Think about the opportunities you didn't take because you told yourself you weren't ready. The conversations you avoided because you feared rejection. The projects you postponed until conditions felt perfect. How many of them were truly impossible? And how many were simply swallowed by delay? The tragedy isn't that the chance was hard. It's that you gave fear enough time to grow roots. But the good news is this: fear feeds on delay, and you can starve it with action. The second you move, even if it's a tiny step, you break the cycle. You show yourself proof. Proof that the story in your head was louder than reality. Proof that discomfort doesn't destroy you. Proof that momentum is stronger than hesitation. And once you have proof, you have power. Consider the first time you drove a car. At the start, fear was everywhere. Your hands were sweaty on the wheel. Your heart was racing. Your mind was screaming about all the ways it could go wrong. But you kept moving. You pressed the gas. You learned to steer, to brake, to trust yourself. Each action was proof that you could handle it. If you had waited until you felt ready, you never would have learned. Fear would have kept its crown. The same principle applies to every challenge. Action precedes confidence, not the other way around. Here's where people get it wrong. They think courage feels like confidence. They think they'll move once they're no longer afraid. But courage rarely feels good in the moment. Courage feels like shaking hands, a racing pulse, a dry mouth, and doing it anyway. The confidence comes after. It arrives as a reward for action, not as a prerequisite. You have to earn it by moving while still afraid. Let's break it down. Fear has 3 stages: the spark, the swell, and the storm. The spark is that first moment when you sense discomfort. The email lands, the opportunity appears, the conversation arises. The swell is when hesitation starts feeding it. You overthink. You imagine the worst. You replay failure before it even happens. The storm is when the fear feels bigger than you, when you've delayed so long that the step now looks impossible. Your job is to act in the spark. Catch it early, before it swells, before the storm arrives. How do you practice this? By shrinking the window between thought and action. The longer the window, the stronger the fear. If you think, I should reach out, do it before the thought gets buried under excuses. If you think, I should start writing, put down the first sentence before your inner critic wakes up. If you think, I should go, take a step before your mind lists reasons to stay. Don't wait for the fear to leave. Act so it has no space to grow. There's science behind this too. Your brain is designed to protect you. When it senses uncertainty, it triggers alarms. What if you fail? What if you're embarrassed? What if you lose? Those alarms aren't proof of danger. They're just protective noise. But if you linger in that noise, it overwhelms you. Acting interrupts the signal. It teaches your brain a new story. Uncertainty is not the enemy. It's the path to growth. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to treat fear not as a stop sign, but as a signal. When fear shows up, it's not always a message to run. Sometimes it's a message to pay attention. Sometimes it's proof that you're stretching. In fact, the presence of fear often means you're moving towards something meaningful. If you weren't growing, your comfort zone wouldn't be trembling. So instead of waiting for fear to fade, learn to see it as a compass, pointing you toward the places that matter. Think of a time when you felt terrified, but still acted. Maybe it was speaking in front of a group, making a life change, asking for something you wanted. You were nervous, maybe even shaking. But afterward, didn't you feel stronger? Didn't you realize the story in your head was far scarier than the reality? That's the lesson you need to keep close. Fear shrinks once you face it, but it swells when you delay. Let me give you a practical tool. The 5-second rule. The moment you feel hesitation creep in, count backward. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and move. Stand up. Dial the number. Write the first word. The countdown cuts through the noise in your head and forces your body to act before your brain talks you out of it. It sounds simple, but it's powerful because it trains you to act in the spark, not to wait for the storm. And remember, acting before fear grows doesn't mean throwing yourself into chaos without thought. It means intentional, forward movement, even small, especially small. Send the message. Open the book. Walk into the room. Those small steps, repeated, build resilience. They teach you that fear loses its grip every time you refuse to feed it. Here's the truth you need to hold. Fear doesn't vanish as you grow. It evolves. New levels bring new discomforts. But if you've trained yourself to move early, fear never controls you. You become someone who doesn't freeze, who doesn't wait endlessly for clarity, who doesn't give fear the keys. You become someone who acts, who builds momentum, who collects proof after proof that you can handle more than you thought. And that's where real freedom lives. Not in a life without fear, but in a life where fear no longer gets to steer. Life has a way of testing you when you least expect it. You can plan, prepare, and try to line up everything neatly. But setbacks will still find their way in. They always do. Plans collapse. People disappoint you. Results fall short. You can't always predict when it happens, but you can decide how you respond. And that decision, how you choose to react in the raw moment of difficulty, often shapes your growth more than the setback itself. When something goes wrong, your first reaction reveals more about your strength than the challenge ever could. Do you explode in frustration, blame someone else, retreat into silence, or shut down altogether? Or do you pause, breathe, and ask yourself what response will actually help? That pause is where all your power hides, because your reaction is one of the only things you'll ever fully control. Most people live as if their emotions are the driver, and they're just the passenger. They let anger grab the wheel. They let disappointment hit the gas. They let fear slam the brakes. And then they wonder why their lives keep swerving off course. But when you take ownership of your reactions, you put yourself back in the driver's seat. Emotions are still there, but you're guiding them instead of being dragged by them. Think about the last time you lost your temper over something small. Maybe someone cut you off in traffic. Maybe a coworker said something careless. Maybe a loved one forgot to do what you asked. For hours, maybe even days, your energy stayed locked onto that frustration. The event itself lasted seconds, but your reaction kept it alive far longer than it deserved. That's the danger of unowned reactions. They extend the life of every setback, turning brief problems into long-lasting weights. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine the same situations, but instead of reacting impulsively, you caught yourself. You paused. You asked, "What's really worth my energy here?" Suddenly, the traffic becomes a chance to breathe. The careless comment becomes an opportunity to practice patience. The forgotten task becomes a chance to step into leadership instead of resentment. Nothing about the situation changed, but everything about the experience did, because you owned your reaction. This doesn't mean suppressing what you feel. Emotions are data, not enemies. Anger tells you something matters to you. Sadness tells you you've lost something valuable. Fear tells you you're stepping outside your comfort zone. The problem is not the feeling itself. It's when the feeling becomes the decision maker. Ownership means you acknowledge the data, but you still choose the action. Let's use a metaphor. Picture yourself holding a remote control. Life presses play on an event. Failure, rejection, disappointment. The emotions start playing on your screen. Anger, sadness, embarrassment. Most people throw the remote away and let the movie run on full volume, on repeat. But you have the remote. You can turn down the volume. You can pause. You can switch the channel. You don't erase the movie. It's still part of your experience, but you control how much it dominates your mind. One of the most powerful questions you can ask in the middle of a setback is, what version of me do I want to show up right now? Do you want to be the version that reacts with impulse, or the version that responds with clarity? Do you want to be the version who lashes out and regrets it later, or the version who uses the moment to grow stronger? Every setback gives you that choice, and over time, those choices stack into your character. Think of two people facing the same failure. One screams, blames, and quits. The other breathes, reflects, and adjusts. One leaves the setback smaller, bitter, stuck. The other leaves stronger, wiser, more prepared. The failure was the same. The reaction built the difference. Here's what you need to understand. Setbacks are temporary, but the habits of reaction can become permanent. If your pattern is to explode every time you're disappointed, that habit follows you into every arena: work, relationships, health, goals. If your pattern is to collapse into self-pity, that habit keeps you from standing up when it matters most. But if your pattern is to own your reaction, to pause, to reflect, to move with clarity, then setbacks stop defining you. They start refining you. Let's make it tangible. Say you're working toward a goal, and you hit a wall. You fail the exam, lose the deal, miss the mark. Your old reaction might be, I'm not good enough. I'll never get this right. That reaction doesn't just express your disappointment. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But ownership looks different. Ownership says, this hurts, but what can I learn here? What needs to change in my approach? What's within my control for next time? That response transforms the same wall into a stepping stone. Or imagine someone criticizes you unfairly. Your instinct might be to defend, argue, or shut down. But owning your reaction means you filter before responding. You ask, is there truth in this I can use? If not, is it worth my energy to engage? What response aligns with my values? By doing that, you protect your peace instead of handing it away to someone else's opinion. The truth is, ownership doesn't make setbacks easier, but it makes you stronger. It builds a kind of quiet confidence that no one can take from you. Because when you know you control your reactions, you stop being a victim of every circumstance. You stop being tossed around by every emotional wave. You become steady, grounded, reliable, to yourself and to others. Now, let's address the challenge. Owning your reactions isn't natural. Your brain is wired for survival, not wisdom. When you feel attacked, your body floods with adrenaline. Your thoughts race. Your emotions spike. That's normal. But normal doesn't mean permanent. With practice, you can build the habit of pausing, of catching yourself in the heat of the moment. Think of it as building a new reflex. At first, you'll fail. You'll still snap, still sulk, still spiral. But every time you catch yourself, even after the fact, you're building awareness. And awareness is step one toward mastery. Try this exercise. The next time you feel a strong emotional reaction, name it out loud. Say, "This is anger. This is disappointment. This is fear." That simple act of naming creates distance. It reminds you that you are not the emotion. You're the observer of it. And from that place, you can choose your response instead of being consumed. Another tool. Practice small pauses. Not every pause has to be long. Sometimes 2 seconds of silence before speaking is enough to shift from reaction to response. Sometimes a single deep breath resets your nervous system, just enough to think clearly. Train those pauses in small moments. When you're waiting in line, when you're stuck in traffic, when someone annoys you. Build the muscle in the little things, so it's ready when the big setbacks hit. And don't underestimate the ripple effect of owning your reactions. People notice. When others lose their cool and you stay grounded, you become the anchor in the storm. That presence builds respect. It builds trust. But most importantly, it builds self-respect. Because deep down, you know when you've let your emotions control you, and you know when you've risen above. That difference is the foundation of self-confidence. Let's zoom out. Life will never run smoothly enough for you to avoid setbacks. They are part of the curriculum of growth. You don't get to skip the lessons, but you do get to decide how you show up for them. You can be the student who resists, complains, and stays stuck. Or you can be the student who leans in, learns, and moves forward stronger. That choice, every single time, rests in your reactions. So when the next setback comes, and it will, pay attention to that first moment, that split second when frustration rises, when blame tries to jump out, when fear spikes. That is your test. That is your chance to take ownership. To say, this moment doesn't define me. My reaction does. And once you start living that truth, setbacks stop feeling like punishments. They start feeling like training. Training for a stronger mind, a steadier spirit, a life that keeps moving, no matter what comes. One of the quietest ways you stay stuck isn't in big mistakes or dramatic failures. It's in the loops your mind spins when you aren't paying attention. A thought enters, maybe a doubt, a worry, or a what if. Instead of finding a solution or moving forward, you circle around it. You replay the same question. Imagine the same scenario. Feel the same tension. Hours pass, days pass, sometimes years pass. And when you step back, you realize you've been thinking, but not deciding. You've been analyzing, but not moving. That's the trap of circular thought. It looks like effort, but it produces nothing. The danger is that circular thinking feels productive. You convince yourself you're being thorough, that you're preparing, that you're figuring things out. But if your thinking doesn't end in action, it's not progress, it's noise. And the longer you live in that noise, the more exhausted you feel, even though nothing has actually changed. Your brain burns energy like a car stuck in neutral, the engine revving, but the wheels never touching the road. The first step to breaking loops is awareness. You have to catch yourself in the act. Ask, am I thinking this to solve, or am I thinking this to stall? If you've been circling the same idea without a new insight or step forward, you're stalling. And that moment of awareness is your chance to step off the merry-go-round. Let's get real. Think about the nights you've laid awake, replaying a conversation. You rehearse what you said, what they said, what you should have said, what you'll say next time, over and over, like a broken record. Hours pass. Your body is restless, and in the morning, you're drained. Did that rehearsal solve anything? Usually not. But your brain convinced you it was important, so you stayed trapped in the loop. Or maybe it's a decision. You've been weighing the options for weeks. Should you stay or go? Try or quit? Leap or wait? You write pros and cons. You ask friends. You Google for reassurance. And yet here you are, still undecided. That's the hallmark of a loop. It gives you the illusion of control while actually keeping you stuck in uncertainty. Here's the truth. Circular thinking is often fear in disguise. You loop because you're afraid to act, afraid to be wrong, afraid to fail, afraid to commit. So you keep rehearsing the thought, hoping that if you spin it enough times, you'll find the perfect answer. But there is no perfect. There's only the clarity that comes after you move. The loop promises certainty, but delivers paralysis. Breaking free means accepting imperfection. It means being willing to decide, to act, even if the outcome isn't guaranteed. Because one imperfect step forward will teach you more than 100 perfect loops in your head. Progress doesn't come from obsessing. It comes from moving. Let's talk strategy. When you catch yourself looping, the first tool is interruption. Break the pattern physically. Stand up. Change rooms. Write the thought down. The act of moving your body or putting the thought on paper pulls it out of the endless cycle in your head. Suddenly, it's not swirling inside. It's external, where you can see it more clearly. The second tool is questioning. Ask, what's the real issue here? What am I afraid of? What's the smallest action I can take right now to reduce this fear? Circular thoughts thrive on vagueness. They spin because they're never pinned down. But the moment you make them specific, they lose power. The third tool is redirection. Replace the loop with focus. Choose a task, even a small one, that requires your attention. Wash the dishes, go for a walk, make a call. Action breaks rumination because your brain can't fully spin and build at the same time. And here's another layer. Sometimes circular thinking isn't just about fear. It's about habit. Your brain has practiced these loops so often, they've become automatic. You might not even realize you're doing it. That's why patience matters. You won't stop every loop overnight, but every time you notice one and choose differently, you weaken the habit. Awareness plus redirection, repeated enough times, creates new mental pathways. Let's bring it closer. Imagine you're working on a dream project, a book, a business, a change in career. You think about it constantly, but instead of taking steps, you loop. Is it the right time? What if I fail? Should I wait until I have more experience? On and on. The loop spins. Months pass. The project remains untouched. Now imagine you caught the loop early. You said, yes. Fear is loud. But what's one thing I can do today? You outline a single page. You make one call. You sign up for a class. Suddenly, the loop breaks because action enters the story. Loops also feed on isolation. When you're stuck in your head, the thoughts echo louder because there's no outside input. That's why sharing can be powerful. Talk to someone who listens with clarity, not someone who fuels your fears. Sometimes saying, The loop out loud exposes how flimsy it really is. You hear yourself repeat the same worry and realize, I've been telling myself the same thing for weeks, and it hasn't helped once. That moment of awareness is the crack that lets light in. Another angle. Pay attention to what you feed your mind. If your environment is full of chaos, news that amplifies fear, conversations that breed negativity, content that magnifies comparison, your brain will have endless fuel for loops. Protect your attention. Feed it clarity. Feed it ideas, conversations, and practices that pull you forward instead of spinning you in circles. And let's be honest, some loops are comfortable. They give you something to do with your anxiety. They keep you busy without demanding change. That's why they're so seductive. But comfort doesn't equal growth. If you want progress, you have to be willing to leave the mental playground of what if and walk into the uncertainty of what now. So here's a challenge. The next time you notice a thought looping, instead of asking, why am I stuck in this? Ask, what's the next smallest thing I can do right now? That question pulls you out of the circle and onto a line that moves forward. Remember, loops will always try to come back. They don't vanish forever. But you don't need to eliminate them completely. You just need to stop letting them own you. Every loop you break is a victory. Every decision you make instead of circling is progress. Over time, you become someone who doesn't spin endlessly in thought, but someone who notices, interrupts, and moves. That's how clarity grows. That's how decisions get made. That's how your life stops circling in the same place and starts building something new. Life has a way of pressing hard against you. A plan falls apart. An unexpected bill shows up. Someone says something cutting, or you receive news that shakes your confidence. In those moments, your natural instinct is to react fast. Your body surges with energy, your chest tightens, your breathing shortens, and your thoughts rush ahead like a stampede. Panic grabs the wheel and tells you, you have to fix this right now. And because you feel that pressure, you do something, anything, just to escape the discomfort. But quick reactions born of panic rarely lead to wise results. More often, they create more mess than you started with. What you need in those moments isn't more speed, it's space. A pause, a breath. Just enough distance to separate what actually happened from the storm. Your mind is building around it. Without that space, you can't see clearly. You confuse the story you're telling yourself with the facts. You react out of fear instead of responding out of strength. And over time, if you keep letting panic decide, your life begins to look like a series of rushed choices, half-built bridges, impulsive words, unnecessary regrets. Creating space doesn't mean avoiding action. It doesn't mean doing nothing while your problems pile up. It means giving yourself permission to slow the surge of urgency long enough to think. It means choosing reflection before reaction. And that choice, repeated consistently, builds a kind of calm power that panic can never touch. Think about the last time you got bad news. Maybe an email arrived with a rejection you weren't expecting. Maybe a friend or partner confronted you with something difficult. Maybe a plan you were counting on collapsed overnight. What happened in your body? Chances are, your mind jumped to the worst-case scenario. You felt the urge to reply instantly, to defend yourself, to scramble for a quick fix. Now imagine if, in that moment, you had created space. Imagine if you had paused for even 60 seconds, breathed deeply, and asked, what's actually happening right now? What matters most here? What's the smartest next step? That one pause could have saved you hours, maybe weeks, of stress. Here's the truth. Panic narrows your perspective. It zooms in on the problem so tightly that you lose sight of all the options. It's like staring at a single word on a page and forgetting the entire story. Space widens your perspective. It pulls the camera back so you can see the whole picture. And once you see the whole picture, your choices improve. You can prove this to yourself. Think about an argument you've had. In the heat of it, emotions ran wild, words flew out, and your reactions felt justified. But later, once the storm calmed, you thought of better words, wiser responses, and clearer perspectives. Why? Because space arrived. You didn't have it in the heat, but once time gave you distance, clarity followed. The skill you need to build is bringing that clarity into the moment, not hours later. Creating space is a discipline. It means training yourself to step back, even when every part of you wants to lunge forward. It's pausing before sending the angry text. It's taking a breath before saying the words you'll regret. It's holding silence for a beat before making a choice that could reshape your future. In that silence, you take your power back. Because silence is not weakness, it's control. Let me give you a picture. Imagine two leaders facing a crisis. One reacts instantly, shouting orders, scrambling, changing directions every few minutes. Their team is exhausted, confused, and unsure what to trust. The other leader pauses. They listen. They breathe. They speak with calm authority, even in uncertainty. The crisis is the same, but one leader feeds the chaos, while the other creates clarity. Which leader do you trust? Which leader do you want to be for your own life? Here's something else to consider. Most of the urgency you feel doesn't come from the outside world. It comes from inside your mind. You tell yourself you have to fix everything now, that if you don't act immediately, everything will collapse. But pause and ask yourself, how many times has that been true? Most problems don't require instant solutions. Most situations are not life or death. What they require is wise solutions, and wisdom rarely comes from panic. So how do you build this habit of space? Start small. The next time you feel the surge of urgency, take 3 slow breaths, not shallow gasps, but deep, steady inhales that tell your nervous system, I am safe. Those breaths lower the noise enough to give you a choice. Next, ask yourself, is this reaction about the situation, or is it about the story I'm telling myself? That question cuts through the fog. Often, the panic isn't about the event. It's about the assumptions you've layered onto it. By separating the two, you reduce the weight of the moment. Another practice. Delay your response. If someone emails you something triggering, wait 10 minutes before replying. If someone pushes your buttons, count to 10 before speaking. If life hits you with a setback, give yourself an evening before deciding your next move. These small delays are not weakness. They are strength. They are the discipline of space. And when you build that discipline, you start making decisions your future self thanks you for, instead of regrets. There's also power in creating literal space. Change your environment when panic rises. Step outside, go for a walk, sit quietly in a different room. Movement resets the body, and when the body resets, the mind follows. The act of shifting physically often gives you just enough separation to regain clarity. And here's something you need to understand deeply. Calm is not a luxury. It's a skill. People often think some personalities are just naturally calm. But calm is not a trait. It's a choice, repeated until it becomes muscle memory. You can train it just like any other skill. Each pause is practice. Each breath is training. Each delay is a rep in the gym of your mind. And over time, those reps build strength that panic can't break. Think about the people you admire most, the ones you see as wise, grounded, unshakable. What makes them that way? It's not that life never tests them. It's that they've trained themselves to create space, to think clearly when others lose control, to breathe when others panic. That's why they lead, why they inspire, why they build. You have that same potential. It's not locked in some unreachable place. It's in the next pause you choose to take. Don't confuse creating space with procrastination. Procrastination avoids. Space prepares. Procrastination says, "I'll deal with this later." Space says, "I'll deal with this wisely." The intention makes the difference. Avoidance feeds the problem. Space starves it of unnecessary drama and gives you clarity to act. And let's be real. Sometimes you'll fail. Sometimes panic will win. You'll react too quickly. Say something you regret. Make a rash choice. That's part of being human. But even then, space is available afterward. You can still step back, reflect, and learn. You can still adjust your response for next time. Ownership of your reactions, as we explored before, and the discipline of space work together. One strengthens the other. So when the next wave of urgency hits, and it will, remind yourself, not everything that feels urgent is important. Not every surge of panic deserves a reaction. You can choose to create space. You can choose to breathe, to pause, to reflect. And from that space, your next step will be clearer, steadier, and stronger than anything panic could produce. When life feels overwhelming, it's easy to slip into patterns that don't move you anywhere. You complain, you replay the same frustrations, you overthink the same scenarios, or you freeze altogether. You do everything except the one thing that would actually help. That's why you need a question strong enough to cut through all the noise. A question that pulls you out of confusion and drags you back into clarity. That question is simple. What would actually help right now? It's deceptively simple. Not what feels good, not what would impress someone else, not what would take the pain away instantly, just what would actually help. That single question grounds you in reality. It interrupts spirals, it silences excuses, and it forces your brain to shift from reaction into strategy. Most people don't stop to ask it. When they're tired, they complain. When they're anxious, they distract themselves. When they're angry, they lash out. And each time, the situation stays the same because none of those reactions move them forward. But when you ask what would help, you remind yourself that progress isn't about venting, panicking, or numbing. Progress is about doing something useful, even if it's small. Picture this. You've had a long day and you're drained. Your instinct is to scroll on your phone, eat whatever's nearby, or tell yourself you'll reset tomorrow. But if you pause and ask, what would actually help right now? The answer shifts. Maybe it's drinking water. Maybe it's taking a walk to clear your head. Maybe it's writing down tomorrow's priorities so your brain can rest. None of those feel dramatic, but each one genuinely helps. This question matters because stress loves to exaggerate. When you're overwhelmed, everything feels massive. Every decision feels heavy. Every problem feels urgent. But asking what helps right now shrinks the weight. It pulls you into the present. You're not asked to solve everything. You're just asked to identify one step that improves the moment. That shift alone is powerful. It reminds you that no matter how chaotic life feels, you're not powerless. You always have at least one move. Think about arguments. In the heat of conflict, you want to win, to prove your point, to get the last word. But if you asked, what would actually help right now? The answer would probably look different. Maybe it's listening instead of talking. Maybe it's walking away for 10 minutes to cool down. Maybe it's lowering your voice so the other person feels safe enough to hear you. Those moves don't satisfy the ego, but they solve the real problem. They help. The beauty of this question is that it strips away pretense. It doesn't care about appearances or instant gratification. It cares about effectiveness. And when you get in the habit of asking it, your life shifts. You stop wasting energy on gestures that look good, but do nothing. You stop repeating patterns that soothe your emotions, but sabotage your growth. You start acting in ways that bring real relief, real progress, real clarity. There's also humility in this question. To ask it is to admit that your first impulse isn't always right, that maybe your emotions don't know best, that maybe what feels urgent isn't what's truly useful. That humility doesn't weaken you, it strengthens you. It gives you the courage to choose wisely instead of impulsively. Here's where the practice gets even more powerful. You can ask this question in almost every context. Work. You're buried under tasks. What would actually help right now? Maybe it's closing the 10 tabs on your screen and focusing on one priority. Maybe it's sending that quick email that clears a block for someone else. Health. You're exhausted and craving sugar. What would actually help right now? Maybe it's water. Maybe it's sleep. Maybe it's stretching your body instead of punishing it. Relationships. You feel disconnected from someone you care about. What would actually help right now? Maybe it's a simple text that says, "Thinking of you." Maybe it's putting the phone down and giving them full attention. Personal growth. You feel stuck in self-doubt. What would actually help right now? Maybe it's writing down what you've accomplished this week. Maybe it's taking one small action to prove to yourself that you're not frozen. Every time you ask, you get an anchor in the storm. But here's the key. You can't just ask the question. You have to answer it honestly, and then act. Otherwise, it's just another thought loop. The power isn't in asking, it's in moving. And often the move is much smaller than you expect. You don't need a grand solution. You just need a useful one. Think about the language of the question. Actually help. Those words matter. They cut through drama. Complaining feels good, but does it help? Overthinking feels thorough, but does it help? Delaying feels safe, but does it help? If the answer is no, you already know what needs to change. You can even use this question to challenge your old habits. When you catch yourself complaining about being tired, ask, is this helping? If not, what would? A glass of water, a short nap, better boundaries around your time. When you catch yourself gossiping, ask, is this helping? If not, what would? An honest conversation, a shift in focus, letting go of what you can't control. Slowly, your mind learns to move from wasting energy to building energy. Sometimes the answer to the question won't be comfortable. Sometimes what helps is hard. What helps might be apologizing. What helps might be facing a truth you've been avoiding. What helps might be shutting down the distraction you've been addicted to. But the moment you choose what helps over what soothes, your life changes. You start walking the path of responsibility instead of excuses. Let's take this deeper. Asking what helps doesn't just solve problems. It builds character. It shapes you into someone who leads yourself with clarity. Someone who isn't blown around by every feeling or circumstance, but who can stand still long enough to ask, what matters now? That steadiness is rare, and rare is valuable, even in moments of success. This question works. You're doing well. Momentum is on your side. Ask, what would actually help right now to keep it going? Maybe it's protecting your schedule. Maybe it's saying no to distractions disguised as opportunities. Maybe it's doubling down on what's already working instead of chasing something shiny. Success isn't sustained by luck. It's sustained by deliberate choices. Over time, this question becomes less of a practice and more of a reflex. When stress rises, you don't just spiral, you ask. When doubt creeps in, you don't just freeze, you ask. When anger burns, you don't just react, you ask. And the answers build a new rhythm for your life. Clarity over confusion, progress over drama, wisdom over impulse. So start today, right now. Ask yourself, what would actually help in this moment? Then listen, then move. That's how you break out of noise. That's how you stop wasting time. That's how you build a life that grows in the right direction. One honest, helpful choice at a time. Complaining is one of the easiest habits to fall into, and one of the most destructive if you let it grow unchecked. You wake up tired, and you announce it. You notice a flaw in someone else, and you point it out. Traffic slows you down, and you vent about it. The news frustrates you, and you share your frustration with anyone who will listen. Before you know it, complaining has become the soundtrack of your days. And yet, not a single thing in your life improves from it. That's the trap. Complaining feels like release, but it doesn't produce change. It gives you the illusion that you're doing something with your frustration. But in reality, you're just rehearsing the problem. You're feeding it with your words. And the more you feed it, the stronger it grows in your mind. Every time you complain, you're making a trade. You're trading your energy, your peace, and your focus for a few moments of venting. You're choosing expression over improvement. And while expression might feel good in the moment, it rarely builds the life you want. Action does. This is where the shift happens. Instead of describing what's wrong, you decide to do one thing that makes it better. Not everything. Not perfectly. Just one step that pulls you forward. That choice, over and over again, is how you turn energy that would have been wasted into energy that creates. Think about it like this. Complaining is a leak. Imagine filling a bucket with water, but there's a hole at the bottom. No matter how much you pour in, it drains out. That's what happens when you complain. Your effort, your focus, your motivation, they leak through the words you use to keep replaying the problem. Action is the patch. Action stops the leak and lets your energy build into something useful. Now, here's the part people resist. They say, but sometimes I need to vent. Sometimes I just need to get it off my chest. And yes, talking through a problem can help if it's directed toward a solution. But endless venting isn't problem solving. It's problem feeding. There's a difference between processing and complaining. Processing is saying, here's what I'm struggling with. What can I do about it? Complaining is saying, here's what I'm struggling with, and let me repeat it until I feel even more stuck. One moves you forward, the other keeps you spinning. You can test this in your own life. The next time you catch yourself complaining, pause and ask, what would actually help right now? That's the bridge between frustration and action. For example, if you're tired of how messy your space feels, instead of repeating it to yourself or others, take 5 minutes to clean one corner. If you're frustrated that you don't feel healthy, instead of talking about how drained you are, drink water or go for a short walk. If you're upset at someone's behavior, instead of complaining to a third person, have an honest conversation with the one who can actually change it. Action doesn't have to be dramatic. In fact, small actions are often more powerful because they're repeatable. The point isn't to fix everything in one move. It's to interrupt the cycle of complaining and replace it with momentum. Once momentum builds, complaining starts to feel less satisfying because you've tasted progress. Let's get practical. Try this. Set a challenge for yourself to replace at least one complaint a day with an action. If you complain about the weather, take the opportunity to do something indoors that builds you. If you complain about your workload, take 5 minutes to prioritize and remove one task from your plate. If you complain about being bored, pick up a book, learn something new, or make a call to someone you've been meaning to connect with. Train yourself to see complaining not as an outlet, but as a signal that it's time to move. Here's what happens when you build this habit. Your self-respect grows, because deep down, you know the difference between talking and doing. And every time you choose doing, you prove to yourself that you're someone who takes responsibility instead of passing it. That proof builds confidence. That confidence builds consistency. And that consistency builds results. Let me give you a picture. Imagine two people working toward the same goal. Both face obstacles. One spends time every day talking about how unfair, how difficult, how overwhelming it all is. The other spends that same time taking small steps, even when they're tired, even when it's inconvenient. A year later, whose life looks different? The one who traded complaints for action. The danger of complaining isn't just that it wastes time. It trains your brain to see the world through negativity. When you complain often, your mind becomes wired to notice what's wrong before it notices what's possible. Opportunities walk right past you because you're busy focusing on problems. Action reverses that wiring. When you act, even in small ways, your brain starts looking for solutions instead of problems. It starts asking better questions. What can I do here? What's the next step? That mental shift changes everything. There's also a ripple effect. Complaining spreads. Spend 5 minutes around a group of people complaining, and you'll feel your energy drain, even if you weren't upset before. Action spreads too. When you choose to move instead of moan, people notice. You set a different tone. You become someone who builds instead of drags. That influence is powerful, not just for you, but for everyone connected to you. Here's the hard truth. You can't live a solution-focused life if your mouth is always describing the problem. Your words direct your attention. Your attention directs your energy, and your energy builds your results. Complaining is not a harmless habit. It's a habit that shapes the life you're building, whether you realize it or not. So the choice is yours. Keep rehearsing problems, or start rehearsing solutions. Every complaint can be a cue to act, to change, to build, to grow. And the more often you choose action, the less space complaining has in your life. Start small. One complaint, one action. Repeat daily. Over time, this becomes second nature. Instead of defaulting to venting, your instinct becomes moving. And when that shift happens, Your life stops stalling and starts compounding, because actions, even tiny ones, stack. Complaints don't. So the next time you feel the urge to say, "This is so frustrating," stop yourself. Ask, "What can I do right now that helps?" Then do it. That single move matters more than 1,000 words of frustration. Trade the easy habit of complaining for the powerful habit of action. That's how you reclaim your time. That's how you reclaim your energy. And that's how you build a life where your words don't just describe your struggles, they direct your solutions. When emotions rise, clarity often disappears. You've felt this before. You said something in anger that you didn't mean. You agreed to something out of guilt that you later regretted, or you froze in fear when you should have acted. In each case, it wasn't the situation itself that dictated your choice. It was the intensity of the emotion at that moment. Emotions are powerful messengers, but if you let them drive your decisions, they can lead you straight into regret. Calm is not about ignoring emotions. It's about managing them. It's about creating enough space inside yourself so that your feelings inform you, but don't control you. Calm doesn't silence emotion. It translates it. Anger tells you what matters. Fear tells you what's at stake. Sadness tells you what you value. But calm decides what to do next. Think of your emotions like weather. A storm might blow in suddenly. Dark clouds, heavy rain, strong winds. If you rush outside in the middle of it without preparation, you'll get swept up. But if you wait, if you protect yourself, if you stay grounded, the storm passes, the weather changes. Your emotions are the same. They're temporary. But if you let them drive your reactions, they can create long-term damage. Here's what most people don't realize. Emotional calm is not a gift you're either born with or not. It's a skill, a discipline, something you can practice until it becomes a natural response. Every time you catch yourself before reacting, every time you breathe instead of bursting, every time you pause instead of panicking, you're building that skill. Let's make this real. Imagine someone criticizes you unfairly. Your first wave of emotion is defensiveness, maybe even anger. You feel heat in your chest, tension in your jaw, words forming on your tongue. The urge to fire back is strong. But in that moment, you have a choice. You can let anger speak for you, or you can breathe, calm yourself, and decide what response actually helps. Maybe the right move is to clarify calmly. Maybe it's to walk away. Maybe it's to reflect later. Whatever the choice, calm gives you access to options. Anger only gives you one: fight. Or picture this. You get bad news at work. A project fails. Your instinct is panic. Your mind floods with worst-case scenarios. You want to rush into action, to fix everything instantly. But if you act in panic, you'll make poor decisions. Calm allows you to slow down, to separate fact from fear, to address what's urgent without creating new problems. Panic narrows your world. Calm widens it. So how do you build this skill? Start with awareness. Notice your signals. Emotions show up in the body before they show up in words. Your breath gets shallow. Your muscles tense. Your heart rate rises. That's your early warning system. When you notice it, you know it's time to steady yourself. The simplest tool is breathing. Deep, slow breaths send a message to your nervous system. You are safe. It sounds too simple, but science backs it. Breathing regulates your body, which regulates your mind. Try this. Inhale deeply for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. Do that 3 times. and notice the shift. Your mind clears just enough to make a better choice. Another tool is reframing. When emotion spikes, your brain tells you a story. This is unfair. I can't handle this. This is a disaster. Calm comes from challenging that story. Ask yourself, is this the only way to see it? What else could be true here? What's within my control? By reframing, you take back control of the narrative. The situation may still be tough, but your mind isn't hijacked by the worst interpretation. Also, don't underestimate the power of silence. In emotionally charged moments, silence is strength. You don't have to respond instantly. You don't have to defend yourself immediately. A pause can save relationships, opportunities, and your peace of mind. Words spoken in heat often echo for years. Words spoken from calm build trust. And remember, calm doesn't mean passive. It doesn't mean you stuff emotions down and pretend everything is fine. That's suppression, and suppression eventually explodes. Calm means acknowledging the feeling fully, anger, fear, sadness, and still choosing your response with clarity. It's the difference between saying, "I'm furious, so I'll lash out," and saying, "I feel anger, but I'll decide how to use it." Think of calm as emotional leadership. You lead yourself instead of letting your emotions lead you. Leaders don't deny reality. They don't ignore pressure. They simply choose to respond in ways that serve the bigger picture. When you lead your emotions, you show yourself and others that you're steady, reliable, and intentional. That's the kind of strength people respect. But let's be honest, you won't always get it right. Sometimes your emotions will win. You'll snap, you'll sulk, you'll shut down. That's okay. Growth isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Each time you reflect afterward, each time you ask yourself, how could I have handled that better? You're training for the next moment. Over time, your reaction time slows. The gap between emotion and action grows wider, and in that gap, calm finds room to live. Here's another practice. Set an emotional standard for yourself. Decide in advance how you want to show up, even under pressure. For example, I don't yell, no matter what. Or, I pause before responding, always. Or, I never make decisions when I'm furious. Having those standards anchors you. In the moment, when emotions flare, you remember the standard and it helps you stay aligned. Also, pay attention to what fuels your emotions outside of crises. Are you feeding your mind with negativity all day? Are you surrounding yourself with people who constantly stir drama? Are you neglecting your health so you're always running on empty? Emotional calm is easier when your baseline is steady. Sleep, nutrition, exercise, and boundaries all contribute to how much control you feel when pressure rises. And here's the payoff. When you train yourself to stay calm, you stop being owned by outside forces. Circumstances lose their grip. Other people's moods don't dictate yours. Stressful events don't control your choices. You become someone who can handle chaos without becoming chaotic. That steadiness doesn't just make you stronger, it makes you free. Because here's the truth. Life won't stop giving you reasons to lose your cool. But the more you practice calm, the less power those reasons have. You'll still feel anger, fear, sadness, disappointment, but they won't hijack you. They'll just pass through. And in their place, clarity will guide you. So the next time your emotions rise fast, remember, you don't have to move at their speed. You can pause. You can breathe. You can decide. That's your power. That's your freedom. That's the calm that keeps you steady when the world around you shakes. Progress doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. More often, it hides quietly in the background while you wonder if anything is happening at all. You put in the effort. You make the calls. You show up day after day. And yet, when you look in the mirror, the results aren't obvious. That's when discouragement creeps in. You think, maybe this isn't working. Maybe I'm wasting my time. Maybe I should quit. This is the season where most people give up, not because they lack potential, but because they lack patience. They confuse visible results with real growth, forgetting that transformation is often invisible at first. A seed doesn't sprout the moment you plant it. Muscles don't grow after one workout. Confidence doesn't appear after one bold decision. Growth takes repetition. It takes faith. It takes the maturity to keep showing up when applause is absent and the scoreboard looks unchanged. The truth is, slow progress is still progress. But only if you keep going. Think about it. If you stop in the middle, you erase every step you've already taken. You've stacked bricks, but the wall never reaches a height that protects or supports you. The discipline is wasted because you walked away before the structure could stand. But if you keep building, brick by brick, day by day, the wall eventually rises, strong enough to change your life. Patience is not passive. It's active endurance. It's choosing to keep moving forward even when it feels boring, even when it feels slow, even when no one else is watching. That endurance is what separates those who achieve lasting results from those who fade out halfway. Think of athletes. The ones who make it to the top don't train only when it's exciting. They train through plateaus. They lift weights when their strength gains stall. They run laps when their times don't improve. They practice fundamentals long after the crowd has gone home. That consistency doesn't look glamorous, but it compounds. And compounding is the secret. The same is true for you. You may not see change immediately, but each repetition, each disciplined choice, each refusal to quit adds up. Over time, those small, invisible gains stack until one day they break the surface and everyone else calls it overnight success. But you'll know it wasn't overnight at all. It was slow progress that you refused to abandon. Here's the mindset you need. Stop asking, how long will it take? And start asking, how far can I go if I don't stop? That shift takes the pressure off the calendar and puts it back where it belongs, on your consistency. Because the truth is, you don't control the timing of every result, but you do control whether or not you keep showing up. Let's make it personal. Imagine you're learning a skill, say, writing, speaking, or building a business. At first, every effort feels clumsy. You doubt yourself. Weeks pass, and you wonder if you're improving at all. But if you track honestly, you'll see small shifts. Your sentences flow better. Your voice grows steadier. Your decisions feel clearer. These aren't dramatic leaps. They're quiet evolutions. And the only way they happen is if you keep practicing when no one else claps. Most people stop right here. They say, I've worked for months and nothing has changed. What they don't realize is that they're standing right before the tipping point. Growth often hides in the dark, and just when you're ready to quit, you're inches away from breakthrough. The ones who stay consistent see it. The ones who give up never will. You need to understand this deeply. Growth is seasonal. Sometimes you're in the planting season. Work is heavy. Results are hidden. Sometimes you're in the tending season. You're maintaining, nurturing, protecting. Sometimes you're in the harvest season. Everything you built becomes visible. But you can't skip seasons. You can't rush the process. And if you quit in the planting season, you'll never see the harvest. This is why patience is a power. It's the ability to hold steady in the slow seasons, to believe in the work even when it's invisible. Patience isn't weakness, it's resilience. It's proof that you trust the process enough to keep moving, even when the scoreboard doesn't validate you. So how do you hold on when results feel too slow? First, redefine progress. Stop measuring it only by outcomes you can see. Measure it by discipline. Did you show up today? Did you keep your promise to yourself? Did you take the next step? That's progress, even if the world hasn't noticed yet. Second, remind yourself of your why. Why did you start? What vision pulled you here? Results may feel far, but your reason is always near. Anchor yourself to that. Third, break the timeline in your head. Don't demand instant results. Commit for the long haul. Tell yourself, I'll keep showing up as long as it takes. That mindset frees you from impatience and fuels you with endurance. And fourth, celebrate small wins. They may not be the grand breakthrough you're waiting for, but they are proof of movement. Proof that you're not standing still. Stack enough small wins, and one day they transform into something undeniable. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine filling a jar with drops of water. At first, each drop seems insignificant. You stare at the jar, and it looks empty. But drop after drop, day after day, it fills. Then one day, without warning, the water reaches the brim and spills over. That's how consistency works. The jar of your life fills quietly, until one day the results overflow. But only if you keep adding drops. Slow progress also tests your motives. Are you doing this for applause, or are you doing it because it matters to you? If applause disappears, will you still continue? If results delay, will you still stay committed? The ones who last are the ones whose why runs deeper than quick validation. Here's the challenge. When you're in the slow season, your mind will tempt you with shortcuts. You'll see someone else moving faster and think, maybe I should just copy them. You'll see an easier path and think, maybe this is the way. But shortcuts come with costs, usually a weak foundation that collapses under pressure. Slow growth feels painful, but it prepares you. It builds the habits, the discipline, and the resilience you'll need to handle success when it finally comes. Remind yourself, you are not behind. You are not failing just because progress is quiet. You are building, and the ones who keep building through the silence are the ones who eventually create noise that lasts. So don't quit. Don't let impatience rob you of the future you're working toward. Keep showing up. Keep stacking the days. Keep going even when no one notices. Because the day will come when everything aligns, when the results appear, when the slow season gives way to visible growth. And when it does, you'll be grateful you stayed the course. Slow doesn't mean stuck. Slow means steady. And steady is how you win a race that most people quit. Your life is not shaped by the things you do once. It's shaped by the things you do repeatedly. One workout doesn't make you strong. One day of reading doesn't make you wise. And one moment of courage doesn't make you fearless. Progress is built through habits, the patterns you choose and repeat until they become automatic. And if you want a life focused on solutions instead of problems, you can't rely on temporary fixes. You need habits that solve, habits that carry you forward, even on the days when motivation runs dry. Here's the mistake most people make. They wait until a problem hits, then scramble for a fix. They get sick, then they think about health, They run into debt. Then they think about budgeting. They hit a crisis. Then they think about mindfulness. Their entire life is reactive. Problem first, habit later. But by then, the damage is done. A solution-focused life flips that pattern. You don't wait for a storm to buy an umbrella. You build habits before the storm arrives. Think of habits as your safety net. They catch you when life shakes. They steady you when emotions rise. They keep you anchored when distractions tempt you. Without them, every challenge feels like a fresh emergency. With them, you face challenges with strength already built in. Let's get specific. What are habits that solve? They're the consistent behaviors that address root causes instead of patching symptoms. For example, sleep. Instead of complaining about always feeling tired, you create a bedtime routine that ensures rest. That habit solves the problem daily, not just once. Budgeting. Instead of stressing every month about bills, you build a habit of tracking expenses. That habit solves financial chaos before it spirals. Communication. Instead of letting resentment build in relationships, you build a habit of honest weekly check-ins. That habit solves conflict before it erupts. Focus. Instead of scrambling against distraction, you build a habit of setting clear priorities each morning. That habit solves wasted time before it steals your day. Habits don't eliminate every problem, but they shrink them. They transform overwhelming chaos into manageable challenges. And when you've built strong habits, most problems never even have the chance to grow. Now, here's what you need to understand. Building habits isn't about willpower. Willpower fades. Motivation comes and goes. Habits last because they bypass the need for constant decision-making. Once something becomes automatic, you don't argue with yourself about it. You just do it. That frees up energy for bigger challenges. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't negotiate with yourself about it. You don't say, "Do I feel motivated to brush today?" You just do it because it's ingrained. Imagine if solution-focused habits were that automatic in your life. Imagine if taking responsibility, calming your emotions, or redirecting your focus were as natural as brushing your teeth. That's the level of automaticity you're aiming for. So how do you build habits that solve? Start with clarity. Identify the areas of your life where problems keep repeating. Maybe it's health, finances, relationships, focus, or confidence. Ask yourself, what's the small habit that would shrink this problem over time? Don't look for dramatic overhauls. Look for repeatable actions. One small shift, done daily, beats one massive effort that burns out. Then, tie the habit to a trigger. Habits stick best when they're linked to something you already do. For example, after you make your morning coffee, you write down your top 3 priorities. After you brush your teeth at night, you spend 5 minutes reflecting on the day. After you finish lunch, you take a 10-minute walk. The trigger anchors the habit until it becomes part of your rhythm. Next, remove friction. Make the habit as easy as possible. If you want to exercise, lay out your clothes the night before. If you want to eat better, stock your kitchen with healthy options. If you want to read more, keep a book on your nightstand. People underestimate how much small obstacles kill habits. By removing friction, you make the solution effortless. Finally, track and celebrate. Progress builds when you acknowledge it. Keep a simple record, check marks, notes, a journal, and celebrate the small wins. Not with extravagance, but with recognition. Tell yourself, I kept my promise today. That acknowledgement strengthens your identity as someone who follows through. Now, let's talk identity. Habits that solve aren't just about action, they're about becoming. If you want to break the cycle of procrastination, don't just act disciplined, become a disciplined person. If you want to stop reacting emotionally, don't just calm yourself once, become the kind of person who stays calm under pressure. When you tie habits to your identity, they stick, because you're no longer just doing something, you're being someone. This is where most people miss it. They think habits are about outcomes, losing 10 pounds, saving money, finishing a project. But habits are really about identity. The outcomes follow naturally when the identity is strong. If you become the kind of person who moves daily, health follows. If you become the kind of person who manages money, stability follows. If you become the kind of person who communicates clearly, strong relationships follow. Habits are the bridge between who you are and who you want to be. And here's the key. Habits don't care about feelings. You may not feel like waking up early. You may not feel like journaling or budgeting or exercising. But habits bypass feelings. You do them regardless. And over time, the feelings catch up. Motivation follows action, not the other way around. Picture this. Two people face stress daily. One reacts differently every time depending on their mood. Some days they're calm, other days they explode. Their life feels unpredictable. The other has built a habit of pausing, breathing, and asking, "What would help now?" Their responses aren't perfect, but they're consistent. Which person do you trust more? Which person do you want to be? That's the power of habits that solve. They create predictability where emotions would otherwise dominate. Let's take this further. Habits also outlast willpower when life gets hard. During stressful seasons, you won't have the mental energy to reinvent the wheel each day. But if your habits are in place, they'll carry you. They'll protect you from collapse because they'll run on autopilot. That's why soldiers train drills, why athletes repeat fundamentals, why pilots rehearse emergency protocols. In pressure moments, habits save lives. In your daily life, they save direction. But don't romanticize habit building. It's not glamorous at first. It's mundane. It's unexciting. It feels small. That's why so many people abandon it. They want instant results. They don't want to stick with the boring daily choices that actually change everything. Don't make that mistake. Embrace the boredom. Trust the compounding. Remember, every small action is a brick. And one day, you'll look back and see the house you built. Now here's the beautiful part. Once habits that solve are in place, your life becomes lighter. You stop wasting energy on repeating problems. You stop scrambling every time something goes wrong. You have structures that support you, routines that protect you, patterns that keep you moving forward. That doesn't mean you'll never face challenges. It means you'll face them with systems instead of stress. So ask yourself, what's one habit you could build this week that would solve more than it costs? Maybe it's waking up earlier to get quiet before the world demands your attention. Maybe it's tracking your spending for 10 minutes each evening. Maybe it's replacing one complaint a day with one action. Start small, but start. Because here's the truth. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. If your habits are weak, your progress will collapse under pressure. If your habits are strong, your progress will stand, no matter the storm. Goals give direction, but habits build the road. And only those who build consistently reach their destination. So stop chasing temporary fixes. Stop waiting for motivation to save you. Build habits that solve, habits that carry you forward, habits that reflect the person you want to become. Then repeat them until they're automatic. That's how you stop living in cycles of reaction and start living in patterns of progress. That's how you build a solution-focused life that lasts. No one is coming to live your life for you. No one is waking up each morning with the same responsibility to steer your choices, guide your actions, or protect your time. That role is yours alone. Yet most people live as if someone else is supposed to push them forward. They wait for a mentor to give permission, for a partner to provide motivation, for a boss to create accountability. They outsource leadership of their own life. And as long as you keep doing that, you'll stay stuck. Because real progress only begins when you decide to lead yourself first. Leadership is often talked about as something external. Leading teams, leading companies, leading communities. But the hardest and most important leadership is internal. It's the ability to command yourself when no one is watching. It's the discipline to choose growth over excuses when no one is clapping. It's the willingness to be your own authority when external pressure is absent. Here's the truth. You cannot follow yourself into growth. You can only lead yourself there. Leadership means initiative. It means responsibility. It means being proactive instead of reactive. When you lead yourself, you don't wait to feel ready. You don't wait for the perfect conditions. You move because movement is required. Think about mornings. If you only get out of bed when someone else is depending on you, you're not leading yourself. You're being pulled. Leadership is when you rise because you've decided your goals matter, even if no one else notices. Leadership is when you take action, not because of an audience, but because of alignment with your own standards. Self-leadership also means creating structure where none exists. If your work doesn't require you to learn, do you still choose to grow? If your relationships don't demand communication, do you still choose honesty? If your environment doesn't enforce discipline, do you still choose consistency? The measure of self-leadership is what you do in the absence of external demands. Consider the athlete who keeps training after the season ends, or the student who keeps reading after graduation, or the entrepreneur who keeps working on vision even before customers arrive. That's self-leadership. That's the refusal to wait for others to validate effort. You might ask, how do I actually lead myself? Start with standards. Set them clearly. Decide what kind of person you want to be and what behaviors reflect that. For example, I don't quit halfway. I respect my own time. I act with honesty. These aren't goals, they're standards. Standards are higher than goals because they don't depend on circumstances. They're non-negotiable. They guide you when motivation disappears. Next, create accountability, even if no one else gives it to you. Write down your commitments, track your habits, reflect daily. Don't wait for a boss or coach to hold you accountable. Be your own. And if you need external support, create it intentionally. Find peers, mentors, or systems that keep you aligned. But never let accountability be an excuse for inaction. Leadership also means making hard choices. When you lead yourself, you'll often face crossroads where one path is easier, but the other path is right. Leadership chooses right. Leadership sacrifices comfort for character. Leadership says no to distractions, no to toxic relationships, no to shortcuts. These decisions aren't glamorous, but they shape who you become. Self-leadership also requires honesty. You can't lead yourself if you're lying to yourself. That means facing uncomfortable truths, the habits you avoid breaking, the excuses you keep making, the patterns you pretend aren't there. Real leadership doesn't look away. It confronts. And when you confront yourself, you regain power. Because honesty, even when it hurts, creates clarity. And clarity is the foundation of progress. Another part of self-leadership is consistency. Anyone can be motivated for a day. Anyone can lead themselves for a week. But leadership shows up in the daily grind. It's in the way you keep promises to yourself, the way you show up for small tasks, the way you carry discipline even when no one else cares. Over time, those repetitions shape your identity. You become someone you can trust. And when you trust yourself, confidence grows. Let's be clear. Leading yourself first doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean you reject support, guidance, or community. It means you don't depend on them to move. You accept help as fuel, not as a crutch. You take advice as input, not as a replacement for your own responsibility. True leaders value support, but they don't outsource action. Think about this. People are drawn to those who lead themselves. Why? Because self-leadership creates stability. It creates reliability. When you lead yourself, others see someone consistent, someone trustworthy, someone who doesn't collapse under pressure. That influence spreads. People naturally respect and follow those who first prove they can govern their own lives. There's a story that repeats in countless lives. Someone waits for years for the right mentor, the right opportunity, the right push. They wait and wait, hoping external circumstances will change. But the day they finally take ownership, decide to lead themselves, is the day everything shifts. Opportunities appear. People notice. Momentum builds. Not because the world changed, but because they did. So here's the challenge. Stop waiting. Stop expecting someone else to do for you what you can do for yourself. No one else can replace your effort. No one else can own your choices. No one else can live your life. Lead yourself first. Decide what matters. Set the standard. Build the discipline and move, even without applause. Because once you can lead yourself, you can lead anything. There comes a point where shifting your mindset isn't just about individual choices anymore. It becomes about identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who occasionally solves problems and start seeing yourself as a solution maker. That's not just what you do, it's who you are. Every day, every decision, every challenge is filtered through this identity. You are no longer defined by what goes wrong around you. You're defined by how you respond, how you build, how you create momentum when others freeze. Living as a solution maker doesn't mean life gets easier. It means you get stronger. It means that instead of drowning in circumstances, you rise above them. It means that instead of feeding negativity, you redirect energy toward progress. Problems will always exist. People will disappoint you. Systems will fail. Plans will unravel. But a solution maker doesn't spend energy resenting that reality. A solution maker asks, "What now? What can I do in this moment that moves things forward?" When you embrace this identity, clarity sharpens. You stop wasting hours explaining why life is unfair, and you start asking better questions. You stop replaying old frustrations, and you start focusing on what you can influence. You don't need every answer. You just need the courage to choose the next action. And each action you take reinforces the identity. Every time you solve instead of stall, you prove to yourself, "I am a builder. I am a mover. I am not stuck." Think about how this identity changes the way you carry yourself. When setbacks come, you don't crumble, you adjust. When emotions flare, you don't explode, you pause and lead yourself. When results feel slow, you don't quit, you stay steady. You walk differently, you speak differently. You move through the world with the confidence that nothing has the power to control you unless you hand it over. That's the strength of living as a solution maker. This doesn't mean you're perfect. You'll still fail, still mess up, still get caught in old habits sometimes. But the difference is, you don't stay there. You catch yourself quicker. You recover faster. You refuse to let mistakes define you, because your identity isn't someone who never struggles. Your identity is someone who doesn't stop. That distinction is what keeps you moving long after others have given up. Another key part of this identity is responsibility. Solution makers don't pass the buck. They don't wait for rescue. They don't say, "It's not my fault, so it's not my job." They say, "This landed in my hands, so it's my move." Even when the situation wasn't caused by them, they take ownership of their response. That ownership gives them freedom, because it keeps their power in their own hands. And here's the ripple effect. You don't just change your own life when you live this way. You become an example. Others see your steadiness, your consistency, your clarity, and they're inspired to raise their own standards. They notice that you don't get lost in drama, that you don't waste energy complaining, that you don't stay paralyzed by fear, and that influence spreads. By living as a solution maker, you give other people permission to do the same. Think about the environments you've been in, where everyone complains. Energy is low, tension is high, and nothing improves. Now imagine one person in that environment who quietly shifts the conversation, who asks, "What can we do about it?" Suddenly the tone changes. Hope re-enters. Options appear. That's the power of identity. You don't even need to give a speech. Your way of being shifts the room. Living as a solution maker also protects your peace. Because when your focus is on solutions, you don't take everything personally. You stop carrying grudges. Stop rehearsing old wounds. Stop letting negativity eat your energy. Instead, you conserve that energy for building something worthwhile. You see obstacles as raw material for growth, not as reasons to quit. And that mindset makes you resilient in ways most people never experience. But here's the part many overlook. Living as a solution maker is a daily decision. You don't graduate into it once and for all. You recommit every morning. You remind yourself, problems will come, but I will not be defined by them. I will be defined by my response. Some days you'll feel strong. Other days you'll feel tired. But identity isn't about mood. Identity is about choice. So ask yourself, what does a solution maker look like in your life? Maybe it's showing up to work with initiative instead of waiting for direction. Maybe it's facing health challenges with discipline instead of self-pity. Maybe it's building stronger relationships by choosing honesty instead of avoidance. Whatever the situation, the question is the same. What choice today proves I am a builder, not a complainer? Over time, these choices accumulate. They shape the story you tell about yourself. They shift your reputation, not just in your own eyes, but in the eyes of others. People begin to know you as the one who finds a way, the one who keeps going, the one who doesn't waste time on blame. That reputation opens doors. Opportunities flow to those who can be trusted with responsibility. And the trust begins with the way you lead yourself. You may not control everything, but you always control something. And the solution maker mindset refuses to waste that control. It chooses discipline over drama, clarity over confusion, progress over excuses. That's the life you're building now. Not a life without problems, but a life where problems never get the final word. Living as a solution maker means embodying clarity, responsibility, and action every day. It means building habits that support you, emotions that serve you, and a focus that strengthens you. It means carrying yourself with the steady confidence that nothing can hold you down if you refuse to stop rising. And it means remembering that your story is written not by what you complain about, but by what you create. This is who you are becoming. Not someone who waits, not someone who avoids, not someone who collapses under pressure. You are becoming the kind of person who builds forward momentum no matter what. You are becoming a solution maker. Slow progress is still progress. That's the truth you need to carry with you as this journey closes. Everything you've listened to, the choices, the habits, the mindset shifts, comes back to one simple principle. You win by not stopping. The pace doesn't matter as much as the direction, and as long as you keep moving forward, you're building a future stronger than your past. Don't underestimate small steps. The quiet decisions you make today, the ones no one applauds, the ones that feel invisible, are stacking into something powerful. Every time you choose action over complaint, every time you pause instead of reacting, every time you take responsibility instead of blaming, you're writing a different story for yourself. It may not feel dramatic in the moment, but over time, it becomes unshakable. Yes, there will be setbacks. Yes, emotions will rise. Yes, some days will feel slow, but those aren't signs of failure. They're signs you're alive, that you're in the process, that you're walking the path. And if you keep walking, no obstacle can stop you. Remember, your identity is no longer tied to your problems. You are not the sum of your struggles. You are the builder, the mover, the one who keeps showing up. You don't need permission. You don't need applause. You need only the discipline to take the next step, and then the one after that. Your life doesn't change in a single leap. It changes in daily decisions, in repeated actions, in the steady accumulation of choices that move you forward. That's how you become the kind of person who doesn't just survive problems, but rises above them. So keep going, keep building, keep choosing solutions over problems, because the only way to lose is to stop, and you're not stopping now.